to Harlow in 1957. My father's name, Kevin Casey, came from Ennis in County Clare, on the west coast of Ireland, and my mother came from a little village just outside Ennis called Bearfield. And they both came over to England initially. My father got a job as the valet to a Lord Banbury, or Lord Beatty of Banbury, that's right. And my mother came over as a nurse. She followed her sister Maureen into nursing into London. And so that's initially. And then somewhere along the line, my father started working a pub, which is the Brazen Head in Paddington, in Lisson Grove in Paddington, and he worked in this 5-bar pub, and my father eventually became the manager of the pub, and so now we're into the it's the mid 50s. But my brother came along, Gerard, in 55, and I think they had to make that decision of a young couple with a son working at a pub. Was that, they're now 25 years of age, so was that what they wanted for the rest of their life? And I guess the decision was no. And then so that moment that has a lot of people say, my father saw an advert for jobs at Key Glassworks in Harlow, and followed that line of inquiry, as many people did, and so they made that decision to come down to Harlow, and to move to Spencer's Croft initially, and then into Great Braes, where they're able to get to. So there's all these little stages. Get a nice corner house, 3-bedroomed, and really what they were looking for. It was, my father cycled, as many people did, down to Key Glass, and there he remained for 37.5 years. And I was always, the point, why do I remember 37.5 years? Because when I'd visit, I lived away from Harlow for 25 years, and when I used to come down and see them twice a year, and my father, after he retired, I think he'd be in a restaurant at a beef eat or whatever, and if somebody quibbled about what veg he could have as part of his order, he would then tell them that he worked in a sort of Victor Meldrew way. He'd worked for 37.5 years in United Glass, and if he wanted peas, carrots, and mushrooms, then he felt he was entitled to. So, and I quite like that. I quite like that line in a Victor Meldrew sort of way. My mother worked initially at Princess Alexandra Hospital. Was raising 3 children, so there was a long period of raising 3 children as a full-time job, but then she also worked a long time at Marks and Spencer's, which has I think fond memories of working on the foods at Marks and Spencer's, and Kath Casey, a lot of people knew her there, and but they both threw themselves in. Certainly my father, who was what they call a larger-than-life figure, threw themselves into community life. And I think the Irish did have that, I guess, advantage, some might say, but that of having a community that they could develop, and whether that, and that a lot of it revolved around the churches, Holy Cross, Our Lady of Fatima, St Luke's, St Thomas's, Old Mulberry and Old Harlow, and placed great store by that in the development of that church and the parish hall next to it, and certainly the Holy Cross would have been the one that my parents went to, and so placed great store by that community. So it wasn't just about going to mass and going our way again, and that's that. It was actually having a community, support of the school, and support of the church hall as well. Bands, etc., and that was important to them. And I guess what was also important was education, very, very much so, that they had come across from the west coast of Ireland, and with their 3 children, and in education was very important, as you saw in a lot of ethnic minorities, and whether when there's emigration, whether you see that they're placing great store by that. We see it right now in 2017, and that hasn't in different groups, and that hasn't really changed. And I think my parents are very proud that all three of their children went on, in the 80s to get degrees. So that was important. Did they ever think about going back? I think they did. My parents would go back to Ennis regularly on holidays, and they enjoyed it there. But I think it's time. I think infrastructure here was important. You have everything, and it would have been a big wrench to go back. It's a long time that people stayed here. Did they miss it? I think so. There wasn't, they weren't maudlin about it long ago and far away, but they, I don't think they missed it that much, because they could go back. It wasn't like they set sail for Australia or America in that way. It's fairly accessible. But the Irish identity was very important, and the Catholic identity as well was very important for them. And they stayed, and were very pleased to have established what they did. And I think a lot of the families felt they had achieved a great deal. And even though probably the second generation, there has been a diaspora again, people that came here and moved away. Many. I moved away. I mean, there was a sort of feeling, and we guess you feel that I got my A levels and moved away off to university and lived away from Harlow for 25 years. But there was that feeling that I've got to get out of here. You can come back, but there was a feeling that was important. Not to everybody, different circumstances, but I think as part of why they stayed is there was for a lot of certainly I feel for a lot of the Irish was need to get out of here now. But not everybody, and it was just a feeling of moving on yourself in that way. So that was important. But I thought, I am the author, as they say, of of a lot of these Harlow 70 films. But I just wanted to do a little insight into why my parents came here and why they stayed.